Hi guys, I hope you all are doing great. So yesterday we started off with law and we saw the basics of law. What is law? Why do we need law? How is law made? All these things. Now today we are going to start with our subject. Okay, so just quickly, what do you mean by law? So law is nothing but rules and regulations for governing human conduct, correct? Why do we need law? We need law to maintain order, to maintain peace in the society, which will lead to economic growth, right? Now what do you mean by business law? Business law means that law which regulates business transactions. Okay, so what do you mean by business law? Business law means that law which regulates business transactions. Fine. Now, for example, a seller has agreed to sell goods to a buyer. So what is the seller going to do? Give the goods to the buyer. And what is the buyer supposed to do? Pay the price to the seller, right? The buyer pays the price. The seller does not give the goods at all. He tells, I'll just give it to you today or tomorrow or day after. It's been so many days the seller has not given the goods to the buyer. So what are the rights that this buyer has? What are the things that this buyer can recover from the seller? What all are the things that he can recover? Can he recover the money? Can he recover the goods? Can he receive the goods? You know, if any loss is caused to the buyer, can he recover that loss as well? What are all the things the buyer can have, or what are the rights of the buyer in this case? What are the things that the buyer can claim from the seller? All of this is mentioned in the Indian Contract Act. Okay, so the first and foremost act that we are going to start is the Indian Contract Act. Now this act came into force in the year 1872 on 1st of September. Okay, so basically the happy birthday of this act was when? On 1st of September 1872. Fine. Now let me ask you a question. What do you mean by contract? Contract means? Contract. Contract is nothing but an agreement. Can I say that? Yes. So contract is nothing but an agreement. Now normally we can also, we call this also as a deal, correct? So deal done means agreement is done, right? Now in ancient times, when people would tell something, they would actually mean it. So when the seller would tell, I will supply the goods to you, he would supply the goods to the buyer come what may. So that was the importance that was given to one person's commitment. Now, I'm sure you have heard of this dialogue, एक बार मैंने commitment कर दी, उसके बाद मैं अपने आप की भी नहीं सुनता. These days that is only in movies, practically doesn't happen at all. In 1872, a need was felt to have a regulation governing contracts. Okay, so what is a contract? How is a contract made? What will be the remedies that will be available to the parties in case the contract is not performed? In case it is performed, then what is going to happen to the contract? All these things are specified where? In the Indian Contract Act. Okay. The purpose of making this act, the object of making this act was basically that when a party has promised another party to do something, whatever he has promised, he should perform it. Okay. What am I telling you? That when a party has promised another party that he is going to do something, he has to perform it. So yes, you're right. In simple terms, what is it? जो वादा किया वो निभाना पड़ेगा. So that is exactly the object or the purpose of entering into a contract. What you have promised has to be fulfilled. Okay, now let me give you a very simple example. Now A has agreed to sell his car to B for 5 lakh rupees. Okay, so what should A be doing? Giving or transferring the possession of the car and transferring ownership in the car to B. And what should B be doing? B should be paying the price to Mr. A and he should be taking that car, correct? So A will perform whatever he has promised. B also will perform whatever he has promised. So this is nothing but a contract, correct? Now let me give you another example. Now there is a factory owner who requires coal for his factory. Okay, now when he gets the coal in his factory, the laborers, they put this coal in the machinery and they work with the coal. Fine. So this factory owner, he wants to purchase 100 tons of coal. So huge factory hai, he requires a lot of coal, he has a lot of laborers as well. Okay, now he enters into a contract with a coal supplier. He tells the coal supplier, I want 100 tons of coal. Will you be able to supply this coal to me? Coal supplier says, yes, sure, why not? This is my business only. I do this only. I have lots of coal. I will supply this coal to you. When do you need the coal? Factory owner says, the coming Monday, Monday morning at 10 o'clock, I will require this 100 tons of coal. So 1000 rupees, say for example, 1000 rupees is the price per ton that they have finalized. Okay. Now on Monday morning 10 o'clock, what should the coal supplier be doing? He should be sending this 100 tons of coal. Fine. Now when the factory owner entered into a contract, he told the coal supplier, Dekho bhai, I want this coal on Monday morning at 10 o'clock because if you do not supply this coal, all the laborers in my factory are going to sit idle, right? So I have to pay the wages to them, but they will actually have no work to do. So itna zyada mera unnecessary loss hone wala hai. I actually cannot bear that loss. It is too much of an expense for me. So I will have to purchase coal from the market and I will have to give that coal to them. Okay, for the work, of course, right? So coal supplier says, no, don't worry at all, I will supply the coal to you. Fine. Now let me just write this quickly. I will give you time to write. I will dictate everything. Do not write anything, just listen now. So what has the factory owner done? He has entered into an agreement with a coal supplier for what? For 100 tons of coal, say for example 1000 rupees per ton. Okay, Monday morning coal supplier has to supply coal. Now today is say Monday morning. Okay, now two things can happen on a Monday morning. First is there can be good news. Good news is what? The coal supplier has performed his promise. That is, the coal supplier has supplied the 100 tons of coal to the factory owner. Okay, that is what both of them wanted to do. Very good. There can be another possibility, that is a bad news, that the coal supplier has not supplied this coal to the factory owner. Okay, now if the coal supplier doesn't supply the coal, what is the factory owner going to do? He is going to make an emergency purchase from the market. Correct? Now you tell me, तुमको कुछ चीज अगर emergency में चाहिए, are you going to pay lower price or are you going to pay a higher price? Definitely you will be paying a higher price. So instead of 1000 rupees, the factory owner from the market purchases the coal at 1500 rupees. Okay, so what has happened over here? Basically, the coal supplier has not performed his promise, right? Now this non-performance of the promise, in law we call this as breach. Okay, breach in simple terms is nothing but ditching. Okay, we do that, itna common hai. Your friends tell you they will come out with you for a movie and then last minute they ditch. So that is nothing but a breach. Okay, so now in case breach has happened, now this word ditch you're not going to remember, completely erase it from your memory. You should only and only remember the word breach. Okay, so now what has happened? The coal supplier did not supply, so the factory owner made an emergency purchase and he purchased the coal at 1500. So when this breach has happened, Is there any loss that is caused to the factory owner? Yes, there is. So there is a loss that is caused to the factory owner, correct? Now what is the loss that is caused? He ended up paying 500 rupees more per ton, correct? Now why? Listen to my question carefully. Why did this loss happen to him? Because the coal supplier did not perform the contract, correct? What did he promise to do? He promised that he will be performing the contract, correct? Now, since this loss is caused to the factory owner because of the breach of the coal supplier has to pay this 500 to the factory owner. Okay, this 500 that he will be paying is called as damages. Okay, now damages is nothing but the compensation that the coal supplier will be making to the factory owner because loss has happened to the factory owner due to non-performance of his contract. Is this simple? Did you understand what damages mean? Okay, so what am I trying to tell you is whenever you enter into a contract, two things can happen. Either the contract will be performed or the contract is not going to be performed. Not going to be performed is called as breach of the contract. So because one party has committed the breach and if there is a loss that is caused to the other party, so in our case 500 rupees is the loss that is caused to factory owner, this party who has committed a breach will have to compensate the other party for the loss that is caused to him. Okay, so what is this basically? What I'm trying to tell you, what is the object or the purpose of what is the object or the purpose of entering into contract? The object of entering into a contract is to have certainty or to have definiteness. Listen carefully. To have certainty or to have definiteness. So why do you enter into contracts? It's for certainty or for definiteness. What does this mean? That when a factory owner entered into a contract with the coal supplier, factory owner is certain that on Monday morning he is going to get the coal. And if he doesn't get a coal and he makes an emergency purchase from the market and he ends up paying more amount, he is certain that he will get this compensation, whatever he ends up paying more. Okay, so why do you enter into a contract? Is for certainty or for definiteness. Is this clear? Now let us write this down. Factory owner, write F. Just once you write factory owner and after that write F. So factory owner enters into a contract with the coal supplier for purchase of 100 tons of coal at 1000 rupees per ton. The contract is to be performed on Monday morning at 10 a.m. The contract is to be performed on Monday morning at 10 a.m. Then write, on Monday morning, two things can happen. On Monday morning, two things can happen. Good news or bad news? Good news or bad news? Write it like this only, like how I've written. So good news is what? Contract is performed. Good news is contract is performed. means what? Right here only again, means the coal supplier has supplied coal to F. The coal supplier has supplied coal to F. Okay. Bad news. Bad news is what? Coal supplier does not supply. Bad news is coal supplier does not supply. That is, the contract is not performed. That is, the contract is not performed. This is called as a breach. This is called as a breach. Because of the breach, the factory owner made an emergency purchase. Because of the breach, the factory owner made an emergency purchase for 1500 per ton. For 1500 per ton. He would have paid 1000. He would have paid 1000 to the coal supplier if the contract was performed. He would have paid 1000 to the coal supplier if the contract was performed. This 500 excess that he has paid, this 500 excess that he has paid is the loss that is caused to the factory owner, is a loss that is caused to the factory owner, and this can be claimed. This can be claimed by factory owner from the coal supplier. This can be claimed by the factory owner from the coal supplier. This is called as damages. This is called as damages. Okay, we have lot of things too much in detail as well, damages and all that we are going to see in subsequent units. Abhi I just want to give you a broad idea of what it is. Okay, is this clear? So just this sentence also you can write down. The object of entering into a contract, the object of entering into a contract is for certainty, is for certainty and definiteness, is for certainty and definiteness. Just one more sentence. The factory owner is certain. The factory owner is certain that either the contract will be performed, that either the contract will be performed, or if not performed, and he incurs a loss, if not performed and he incurs a loss, he can claim that from the coal supplier. He can claim that from the coal supplier. Okay, fine. So just something not relating to this. Now you have got a lot to write, obviously in maths as well, in accounts as well, in every subject you have lot to write. In law also you have a lot to write. I will be dictating, giving you many examples for every provision that we come across. So we will genuinely have a lot to write. So please keep a separate notebook. Okay, now should that notebook be ruled or should it be plain, or what it should be? It can be anything. Now we are in a professional course, we will not be checking your notebooks. What you are writing in your notebook is for yourself, so that before your exam, when you read, when you revise it, you should be able to understand it properly. Okay, so you can have any book that you wish. Now you can actually have an all-in-one book also, but I would really not recommend that, because since there's a lot to write, having separate books for separate subjects will be better. Now in the exam, you know, you're going to get ruled papers to write the answers. So that ruled is not like your super single rule where you have only very little space, and it is not even like too much space. So it is not big rule, not too small rule as well. I think in a page you have about maybe 18 to 20 lines that you have to write. So it is a little bigger only. So if you guys think that, you know, writing in plain notebook, you will not have the habit of writing in rule book, it is better to write it in a rule book only. Okay, now my handwriting, if you see, it is too big. So especially those whose handwriting is very big, make sure that you are writing in rule notebook, so that it is a practice for you. In the main exam you will not face any problem at all. Okay, so this was about notebook. What else I wanted to tell you is, have a highlighter. I will show you how to underline, how to highlight later. Highlighting is an art, I feel. You should know how to highlight. Everything is important, so you cannot keep underlining all entire sentences. So you will see how I am highlighting. You will be able to learn and do that as well. Okay, okay. So is this okay? So did you understand this example about why is a contract entered into? So object of purpose of entering into a contract is for certainty or for definiteness. Okay, now any law that we have, the law has got certain sources. So basically sources is nothing but the origins of law. So the law, it takes its validity from different places, from different origins. Fine. Now since we are talking about Contract Act, let me tell you what are the sources of law of contract. What are the sources of law of contract? So every law that is relating to contract, first and foremost, it finds its source in the act that is made for it. So first and foremost is the Indian Contract Act. So whatever is the act, that is always and always the prime source of the law. Whatever are the legal rules, they are written where? They are written in the act itself. So this act has come into force in the year 1872, correct? 1872 mein was India independent? No. So who has introduced this act to us? The Britishers have introduced this act to us. And do we still follow it? Yes, we do. We like it. We are still following this act. Okay, so the law of contract first and foremost finds its source where? In the Indian Contract Act. Okay, now second, another important source for law are the judicial decisions. What do you mean by judicial decision? Judicial decisions are nothing but the court orders or the court decisions. Okay, now in simple terms, these are nothing but case laws. Now, when A and B have a dispute and they go to the court, court gives the case in favor of A. Say whatever it is, court says what A is telling is right, A can recover damages from B. If a similar case arises between P and Q, P and Q can follow the same decision that was given in A and B's case. Okay, so what is happening over here? If there is another case with the same facts as the previous case, the previous court decision can act as a guide to this newer case. Correct? So basically, court decisions are followed, है ना? Court decision is also treated as if it is a law. And should you follow it? Answer is yes, you will have to follow it. Okay, so once we proceed in our subject, I am going to tell you certain very important court decisions which we follow as if they are the law itself, as if it is written in the act, but actually it is not written in the act, but still you follow that and you read it as if it is the law itself. Okay, so first source is what? The Act, the Indian Contract Act. Second source is what? Judicial decisions. Fine. I will again make you write. Just wait for a few minutes. Listen to this. Now, another very important source for law is custom or usage of trade. Now, what do you mean by custom? Custom means tradition. Custom and usage of trade, they totally mean the same thing. That is what? Tradition. Now, here we are not talking about, as such any particular tradition that your family will follow. We are talking about the traditions which a society as such will follow. Okay. Now, just to give you an example of what it means by tradition, earlier when one person would visit another person's house, they would offer milk. So these people would offer milk to their guest. Now later it changed, and then first thing that you would offer was water to the guest. Now again, some days again it changed, and first thing that you will ask is, will you have tea or will you have coffee? This is what you ask to the guest, right? Now jaise jaise time ja raha hai, we don't know what kind of stuff that people will ask their guest. So custom keeps changing. Correct? Now another example I can give you is, say for example, this thing. Now what is this? Now when you are writing a sentence and you write this, what is this? I.e. that is, है ना? We read it as that is, correct? But actually speaking, it is not that is, it is in essence. Right? But whenever you see people telling, whenever this IE comes, they will tell what? That is. Everybody reads as that is, and now let me tell you, that is accepted for IE. You're not telling something wrong, it is accepted. Okay, so custom change hota hai. Now earlier times when people would only commute from one place to another by walk or by carts and carriages, and later motor vehicles came. So later on the law came for motor vehicles, correct? So custom changes, law also changes. Okay, I'll give you another example. Now if I want to make payment to you, I can make that payment in cash, or I can make that payment in check, or I can use something called as promissory note or bills of exchange. Are you guys aware about this? You must have heard about this in your school. Okay, now whenever payments are made through these promissory note or bill of exchange or check, there is one act that is called as Negotiable Instruments Act, which governs these instruments. Okay, now there is another instrument which is called as hundi. Okay, now this hundi is actually, about hundi, it is not mentioned in the Negotiable Act itself. Now this hundi is basically a document which is made in a local language among local people of that particular community. So if this hundi has got any particular law applicable, then that law will apply. But if hundi has got no particular law applicable, then this Negotiable Instruments Act is going to apply. So see, hundi is basically what? A local document made in a local language. So because of usage from a long time, it is treated as if, a legal right only is given to that, and it is treated as if it is a completely valid document. It is a valid document now. Okay, so what I'm trying to tell you is, whenever, as and how the traditions, the usage, the customs in business keeps changing, the law also will keep changing. Okay, so basically law is not static. Customs change, law also may change. Okay, so in the previous class I had told you, so whenever laws are made, law considers the societal norms, society's norms, and then laws are made, right? So if the society's norms change, when the customs change, the law also will change. Okay, now this is applicable actually for every law, but since we are talking about Indian Contract Act in special, we will also write like this. Okay, so write down what are the sources of law of contract. The sources of law of contract. First source, the Indian Contract Act. First source is the Indian Contract Act. So you can write this. So this is the prime source of law. Legal rules are present in the act. Second source, judicial decisions. Judicial decisions. So that is nothing but court orders, court decisions, or case laws. So case laws act as a guide. Just one sentence. Case laws act as a guide for deciding. Act as a guide for deciding another case on similar facts. For deciding another case on similar facts. Okay, then third one, custom or usage of trade. So custom is not normally written. It is not normally written, but it is accepted. Custom is not normally written, but it is accepted. So custom changes, law also may change. Custom changes, law also may change. Okay. Fine? Yes. So now whenever you are writing act, you should remember that always you are writing the A in capital, okay? Do not write this act in small. Fine? Now another thing that I wanted to tell you was that act, that is law, is divided into different paragraphs. Now you have a notebook. If I tell you, you have a textbook, if I tell you, open page 53, it is easy, you will open page 53. So many things are written, so I will tell the last line that I'm talking to. Apne books kya chotu chotu hai, and it is easy for us to open the page number and directly refer. But whenever laws are written, too many things are written, laws are bulky, you cannot refer to something as such by exact page number. It would be better if you can exactly refer to that sentence that you want to, correct? So it will be better to refer to that sentence. I'm so sorry. So if you want to refer to a particular sentence, to avoid confusion, if the sentences are serially numbered, it would be even more better, correct? So whenever an act is written, it is every sentence, we can say, or every concept as such is numbered serially, and these numbers we call them as sections. Okay, so these numbers, these paragraphs, separate paragraphs that are there, they are called as what? Sections. So law is, the section is nothing but the body of the act. So everything that is written in law is mentioned in sections. Now sections can have different parts. They are called as subsections, clause, subclause as well. Okay, so sections can have subsections, section can have clauses, section can have subclauses. So usually if something is written like this, say for example like this, okay, so this is what? Section 7 clause 2 section 7 subsection 2 clause A and subclause Roman number 1. Okay, so this is what? Section 7 is section, 2 is subsection, A will be clause, and 1 will be subclause. Okay, now usually the number that is next to the section is a subsection, but it can also be a clause. Okay, it can also be a clause. Now whenever there are different points wherein all the points are to be read as a single concept, this is divided into subsections. Okay, but when there are different points, the points are not relating to one another, they are called as clauses. Okay, I'm repeating this once again. Abhi tumko aisa lag sakta hai this is something too big, but it is, you will just, as we go forward, you will remember it nicely. Now what am I telling is, whenever the section is made up of different points wherein all of them to be read together to form a single concept, those separate points will be called as subsections. And whenever the points are independent of each other, matlab this you can read separately, this you can read separately, they will be called as clauses. Now for example, in our Indian Contract Act, there are, you will see, we are going to see agreement is defined in one particular, okay, say for example, consideration is defined under section 2D. Agreement is defined under section 2E. So over here, this E and D that you have, these are clauses. Why are they clauses? Is because you can read 2D separately, you can read 2E separately, they are not relating to each other. Companies Act mein I will give you example where there are subsections. Okay, too early right now. When we come to Companies Act, I will tell you at that time. Is this okay? So as such, law is divided into different points, different paragraphs called as sections. Is it okay? Now you will see everywhere in the book that it will be written section this, according to this section this means this, according to this section this means this. Everywhere throughout law books it will be written. I know this question you have is, should we remember section numbers? Okay. Now for foundation level, it is a big no. You are not expected to quote section numbers in the examination. Okay, for CA final students, it is compulsory. They have to quote section numbers. For you guys, it is not required. Now you will see, even later in your life when you're doing articleship, or even after that when you become a chartered accountant, when you want to refer to something, you directly refer with section numbers. Is it required for you to write in foundation exam? Answer is no. I have been into teaching for a long time now, and initially, I would do this, that makes students learn the section numbers, but I realized the brightest of the brightest students also, in the examination, you guys are under pressure and you may forget the section number. Now, if your entire answer is right, but you have quoted the wrong section number, you will get 0. You will not get any marks. You will literally get 0. At the same time, if you do not mention the section number, but you write your entire answer, you may get full marks. You can get full marks. Okay, so quoting section numbers in your exam, it is not at all compulsory. You guys know we have so many rankers from our academy. None of them have quoted section numbers, but they have still got a rank. Okay, so even if you think now abhi se अच्छे से पढ़ेंगे, we will be able to remember all the section numbers, exam is far away, if you're thinking like that, in the exam you are under pressure. You a little mess up, little clause number section here there, some mistake you do, you're going to get 0 marks. So I will tell you what is important, and we will remember those section numbers only. Entire section numbers we are not going to remember. Okay, I will not revise that also. I will revise only what is important. In the exam, so they'll never ask you, but still I will revise what that is important for you in your life as such. Okay, so is this clear? If you think you're going to forget later, then write down, should I remember section numbers? Answer is no. Answer is no. No need to remember, no need to quote in the examination also. Okay, I hope this is really very clear to you. Okay, one more question that I've been asked, as you have received 2 books for law. So one is your material and another is your question bank. Okay, now in this question bank you will see there are a lot of questions, hundreds and hundreds of questions for every act. So all these questions are whatever questions have come in the examination for the past, I can say, more than 20 years. So this contract act that you have now was a part of CA IPCC as well. So whatever questions were asked in IPCC exams, those also are covered. Foundation, previous foundation, old foundation, whatever, all those are covered. Some new questions that I have found, that also I have covered. So you have a lot of questions that are covered in question bank. Now listen to this very carefully. When I'm teaching you law, I'm going to teach you how do we read law, how do we interpret law, how do we understand law. Okay, now when you're studying, I told you law subject you have till CA final, and after that also in your life you're going to need it. So in a practical case, how to apply it also I will be teaching you in class, and we will be writing it down. Okay, now you're going to have a lot of chapter wise tests that I'm going to conduct. So when we are conducting the test, listen carefully. Please do not read question bank right now. Okay, now when you are reading the provisions in the exam, when you see the questions, you will have an experience of how to apply those provisions. You will know ki acha, if this thing happens, then acha, this is the provision that is to be applied. You will literally get to learn that. This is something that you have to develop. You should know when which provision you have to apply. Okay, you will get it with practice. But all the questions at one place, I have still given it to you. When we finish our entire syllabus, refer to question bank only at that time. Making mistakes in class test is affordable. You cannot afford to make mistakes in your main exam. So if something different comes, you should be able to apply the correct provision, which will happen only if you have a previous experience. So right now, do not refer to question bank. Only listen to the classes, read the examples, read the provisions like I tell you to, revise like how I ask you to. Do not read question bank. And another thing, are you required to refer to any other material other than this? The material that I am providing you, it includes a lot of things which are there in ICI material, things which are not there over there as well, things which are important for you to know. All of it is already covered. Now when we make our materials, we refer to different maybe standard textbooks, we refer to ICI material and then make our material. So everything is already covered and it is already updated as it is applicable for you. You may come across certain books or certain things which are not applicable for you, or which have changed, which have been amended, but they are not updated in that book. It will create a lot of confusion. Okay, so if you refer to my material, it is more than enough. You do not have to refer to anything else. And I have also told you about photographic memory, that will work only if you refer to one book. I am very serious about this. Same thing you read from different books, you will not be able to relate. It will create a lot of confusion and it is unnecessary. Please avoid that. Everybody reads from only this book. It is more than enough. You don't need anything else. Okay, so question bank, again just quickly, question bank is very important, but you have to refer to it after we finish the act. I will tell you little later when you can refer to it. Right now when you're writing chapter wise test, do not refer to it. Your thinking will become very limited. You will not be able to think outside of the box. So what all can we apply? You will not be able to think that if you read question answer at the moment. Okay, so finish everything and then refer to that. Is this okay? I hope this is really very clear to you. Okay, now since we spoke about sections, I told you every act is divided into sections. Now so obviously they are serially numbered, so the first section will be what? Section 1. Now in all the acts, section 1 talks about the applicability of the act. Okay, it talks about the applicability of this act. Now usually applicability can be based on two things. First is the nature of the establishment, or secondly it can be based on location. Now listen, what do you mean by nature of the establishment? So sometimes in an act you can have say for example in bonus act specifies that this act is applicable to every factory. This act is applicable to those establishments which have got more than 20 employees. So what is this over here? The applicability of the act is based on nature of that establishment. If it is a factory, bonus act will apply. If it is not a factory but there are more than 20 employees, then also bonus act is going to apply. Okay, we do not have bonus act in our syllabus. I just wanted to give you an example. Okay, then location wise applicability means, now since we are studying about laws that are Indian laws, over here location wise means it applies to whole of India. Okay, now I had told you there are central acts and there are state acts. If there are state acts, it will be applicable to that particular state, again location wise, and if it is a central act, it will be applicable to whole of India. Okay, now contract act is applicable to whole of India as well. But there's one thing that I want to tell you. Have you heard of this recently? About 1-2 years back, there was something called as Article 370. Article 370 from the constitution was removed. So Kashmiri Pandits, they were all very happy. Do you remember this? That had happened some time back. Okay, now first and foremost, the sections in the constitution, they are called as articles. Okay, so only for constitution they are called as articles. For every other act they will be called as section. Fine. Now this section 370 basically said that Jammu and Kashmir in India was given a special status. Since it is regarded as a disputed territory, a special status is given to them. That is, whenever an act is made, even though it is a central act, you will ask Jammu and Kashmir, their state legislature, do you want this act to be applicable to you? If they like it, then yes, it will be applicable to them. If not, then it will not be applicable to them. So why am I telling you this? Is because Indian Contract Act earlier was applicable to whole of India excluding Jammu and Kashmir. They did not like it, they did not want that act, so it was not applicable to them. But since the time that this article has been removed, no special status is given to Jammu and Kashmir, so it is very well a part of India. Anything that is applicable to whole of India will also be applicable to Jammu and Kashmir. Is this okay? So why I'm telling you this is because there is a possibility that sometime, you know, if you're referring to Contract Act somewhere from some other book or something, you will see this sentence over there that this act is applicable to whole of India excluding Jammu and Kashmir. Abhi wo excluding Jammu and Kashmir has been removed right now. So if that is amended, it is amended, and right now what is the status? Indian Contract Act applies to whole of India. Yes, whole of India. So that is of course including Jammu and Kashmir. Is this okay? Is this clear? So section 1 talks about applicability. Now usually section 2 and section 3 talk about definitions. Now definition means what? Whatever are the terms that we are going to use throughout the act, it becomes a very difficult process that those terms are explained at every place where that term comes. So what they have done is, in these sections only, that those terms which are repeated throughout the act, and of course they have got the same meaning throughout the act, they have been mentioned over here. Okay, so words also, you guys also know that based on concept, based on context, every word has got different meaning. So what is that word to be understood as for all future? It will be mentioned usually in section 2. If it is small, section 2 it will be over. If that act is big, then section 2 usually and section 3 also may cover definitions, and section 4 onwards you will have the regular provisions of the act. Okay, now for example, we are going to see what it means by contract, what it means by agreement. So these words are defined under section 2 of this act. Is it okay? Is this clear? So maybe you can write this, that in an act, write A capital, in an act, the sentences of law are numbered in sequences. Sentences of law are numbered in sequence, and these are called sections. These are called sections. Okay, so write just this as an example only. 7(2)(a) and Roman number 1, write like this, and you can put arrows and write over here. Section, subsection, clause and subclause. Okay, so these are nothing but sub parts of a section. Fine, you don't have to get into too much technicality, but I know you have understood it well. Okay, and you've written this, no? Should I remember section numbers for foundation examination? Answer is no. Section 1 of any act talks about applicability. Section 1 of the act talks about applicability. Applicability can be nature wise and or location wise. And or location wise. So nature wise, for example, Bonus Act applies to factory or an establishment का short form है ये, ESTB I have written, for an establishment which has got more than 20 employees. location, since we are referring to acts applicable in India, it is India only. Okay, so once again I would like to tell you, do not refer to question bank right now. तुम्हारा thought process बहुत limited हो जाएगा. You know, not just for marks, not just for your scores. Law is going to help you in your life as well later. So you should be smart. You should not just, we just do not believe in making students chartered accountants. We want to make them good professionals. So we will develop our understanding of law. So please do not refer to question bank right now. Okay, everything, all exam questions, everything is covered. So later on we will read that. Okay. Is this okay? I hope you have understood how the section has to be, how the section is in a law. Okay, I'll just wait for 1 minute. If you want, you can go through this and then we will continue again. If there's something that you want to go through, you can go through and then we'll continue. Okay, so I hope you've just gone through whatever you wanted to go through. So now let's start with the act. So you can open your books now. Indian Contract Act 1872. So this is the first unit that we are doing, nature of contract. So what is law? We read this already. Law is a mechanism for regulating the human conduct in a society. It consists of rules and principles enforced by an authority to regulate people's behavior with a view to secure justice, peaceful living and social security. We saw all of this in our previous session, right? What is mercantile law? There are various branches of law such as civil law, criminal law, tax law, labor law, etc. Mercantile law is that branch of law which regulates business transactions. It includes law relating to contract, sale of goods, partnership, companies, negotiable instruments, etc. Okay? Then, object of law of contract. Tell me, what is the purpose of law of contract? It is to introduce certainty and definiteness, right? Today's session only we saw this. So the law of contract forms the basis of commercial or business law. It determines the circumstances in which promises made by the parties to a contract shall be legally binding on them. Its rules define the remedies that are available in the court of law against a person who fails to perform his contract and the conditions under which the remedies are available. It is the most important branch of business law. It affects all of us in one way or the other. It is, however, of particular importance to people engaged in trade, commerce, industry, as bulk of their business transactions are based on contracts. Okay, now see guys, I am explaining everything to you. Actually, there's no need for me to read it. I can just explain and leave it. But I would want to read every word, every sentence given, so that whenever you are revising, तुमको ऐसा लगना चाहिए that हाँ, this we have covered in the class, this we have read, we have underlined this. That is why I'm reading it. So when I am reading, you should not sleep. Okay, you should also read. The law of contract introduces certainty and definiteness in business transactions. Okay, we are going to revise this every day. When we revise, I'm going to ask this, what is the object of law of contract? So at that time you have to tell it introduces certainty and definiteness. Like I told you, please do not underline, highlight the whole book, entire sentences. Only highlight relevant words. Why do you highlight? Is so that your attention is drawn to those words, so that you don't miss those words. So only the important words we will highlight. Okay, Sir William Anson observes in this connection that law of contract is intended to ensure that what a man has been led to expect shall come to pass, and that what has been promised to him shall be performed. So what is promised has to be performed. जो वादा किया वो निभाना पड़ेगा. Okay, that is what Sir William Anson said. Are you required to remember this definition, these words? No. In simple words, it may be said that the purpose of law of contract is to ensure that the realization of reasonable expectation of the parties who enter into contract. Okay, fine, ठीक है. Indian Contract Act 1872. So this also I told you, when is the happy birthday of Indian Contract Act? It is on 1st September 1872. What is the location wise applicability of the act? This act applies to whole of India. There is no nature wise applicability for Contract Act. It is only location wise applicability. So the law relating to contracts in India is contained in the Indian Contract Act 1872. The act came into force on 1st September 1872. It applies to whole of India. Okay. The act mostly deals with general principles and rules governing contract. The act is divisible into two parts. Part 1, the general principles of law of contract. It applies to all the contracts irrespective of their nature. Part 2, certain special contracts: indemnity, guarantee, bailment, pledge and agency. Now listen very carefully. This law of contract is divided into two parts. The first part talks about general principles. The second part talks about certain special contracts. Okay. Now this act is different from all the other acts because it specifies the general principles of contracting. What do you mean by general? General means normally applicable, right? It means general, है ना? Now general principles, now listen carefully. This act provides the broad parameters of contracting. This act provides the broad parameters of contracting. What are the rights and obligations of the parties is to be decided by the parties themselves, thus indirectly allowing the parties to make a law for themselves. Listen carefully. I want to sell my house, okay? So I tell the buyer, I want to sell my house. Are you willing to purchase the house? Buyer says, yes, I am ready to purchase your house. At what price are you selling? So I tell, I want to sell my house, say for 2 crores. So he says, no, 2 crores is very high. I am ready to purchase it for 1 crore 80 lakhs. So we finalize the price as 1 crore 80 lakhs. By which date, how much money I want? Who will decide that? Me and the buyer together, of course. The price is not 2 crores, but it is 1 crore 80 lakhs. Who has decided that? Again, me and the buyer together, correct? So now that we have decided it is 1 crore 80 lakhs, he has to pay to me 1 crore 80 lakhs. I tell him that, right now when we are entering into an agreement, I want 20%. By this particular date, I want another 20%. By that particular date, I want another 20%. Who has decided this? Me and the buyer, we have decided it. So by this date, if this much amount is not paid, I can proceed against the buyer. Correct? So if you see over here, the house to be sold at how much amount? We only decided. Correct? Which date, which payment has to be made? We only decided. What mode of payment I want? Do I want cash or do I want check or do I want any other promissory note or what? Again, who has decided that? Parties only have decided. So over here, the law is providing broad parameters of contracting. Law is allowing the parties to make a law for themselves. So if I do not get my 1 crore 80 lakhs, if I do not sell my house to him, he can proceed against me. If I do not get my money, I can proceed against him. Law did not tell that you have to sell your house for 1 crore 80 lakhs. Law did not tell that you have to have 20% amount by this date, 20% by this date. Law did not tell that. Who has decided that? The parties only have decided that. Did you understand this? So this law provides the general or the broad parameters of contracting. So we are going to see later that law says you can enter into a contract with any person who is 18 years of age. So whether that person is 19 years, 20 years, 50 years, 80 years, 100, 150 years, it can be any person. 18 का होना जरूरी है. So this is just a broad parameter. Okay, I hope you are understanding this. So how are general principles of Contract Act different from any other law? Is in general principles, the law is providing these broad parameters of contracting which allow the parties to make a law for themselves. Okay, now if you see the special contracts, indemnity and guarantee, bailment and pledge, and contract of agency, I'll take this up a little later, explain to you in detail what they are. But so in case of indemnity, guarantee, bailment, pledge and agency, you will see what are the rights of indemnity holder, what are the rights of this party, the obligations of this party, rights of this party. It is as a clearly mentioned like this. Contract of agency, you will see what are the rights and obligations of principal, what are the rights and liabilities of this agent. But in Contract Act, the general principles part of the act, we will not see what are the rights or obligations of a particular party. Why? Because what are his rights and obligations are to be decided by the parties themselves. The parties can make a law for themselves. Okay, so they can decide the terms and conditions of the contract following the broad parameters that the Contract Act allows, and make a law that they themselves can make it applicable to themselves. Okay, so how are general principles different from any other acts, or how are general principles different from the special contracts of the same act? Is they provide broad parameters of contracting. They provide broad parameters of contracting. Okay, so I've mentioned this sentence many times, so now write this down. How are general principles of the Contract Act? Okay, let me tell you this as well. General principles, right now you have it in we have it in our syllabus for CA Foundation. These special contracts, we do not have it for foundation, but we have it for intermediate. Okay, in IPCC, you know, this general principles also we had, all that we read in foundation also we had, and we also had special contracts. But now they've removed the general principles and we only have special contracts. Okay, so you were writing this. How are general principles of Contract Act? How are general principles of Contract Act different from special contracts? Different from special contracts. Put a slash. Different from other laws. Different from special contracts slash different from other laws. Write down these general principles. These general principles provide the broad parameters of contracting. These provide the broad parameters of contracting. The basic principles. The basic principles are specified. The basic principles are specified. The parties have to decide. The parties have to decide the rights and obligations for themselves. The parties have to decide the rights and obligations for themselves. Thus, it allows the parties, to make a law for themselves. Thus, it allows the parties to make a law for themselves. Okay, is this clear? Okay, so first part is general principles and then you have special contracts. Okay, the date of the this act came into force, we have to remember this. This was a question that was asked as MCQ bits when law paper also was MCQs in CPT. It was asked many times and we have to remember this date. Okay, so 1st of September 1872. Is this okay? Then definition of a contract. So you tell me in simple words what is contract. Contract is nothing but agreement. Agreement is nothing but what, like we spoke, it is about a deal that we talk about, right? Okay, let's read this. Contract is an agreement made between two or more parties which the law will enforce. So section 2H defines a contract as an agreement enforceable by law. Such a chotu definition. See what is contract? It is an agreement that is enforceable by law. Now listen to this very carefully. So what is, let me write this down. Contract is nothing but an agreement which is enforceable by law. So contract is an agreement plus enforceable by law, right? Now what do you mean by an agreement? When one party tells something which is agreed to by another party, an agreement is formed, correct? Now let me change this sentence a bit for you. Now when one party offers to do something which is accepted by the other party, an agreement is formed, right? So agreement is nothing but when one party offers to do something and the other party accepts that offer. So I ask my friend, will you buy my car for 5 lakh rupees? My friend says yes. Is an agreement formed? Yes, it is formed. I offered to sell my car for how much? 5 lakhs, and that is agreed to by my friend. Agreement is formed. Okay. Now have you heard of this word proposal? Now I know when I tell proposal what is coming in your mind. I know. Let us talk about that proposal only. So where A tells B, will you marry me? What is A doing basically? A is asking B, will you marry? So what is this proposal basically? Proposal is nothing but A is giving an offer to B to get married to A. Correct? So offer is nothing but proposal. Now what can B do? B can tell yes or B can tell no. Now assuming that B is going to tell yes. Okay. So B says yes, I will marry you. So what has B done? B has accepted this proposal. Correct? So accepted proposal is nothing but an agreement. Correct? Have you heard of another word? I will call this as this word, promise. Yeah, God promise, mother promise, whatever. Promise. Have you heard of this word, promise? Promise means what? What I will tell you, that I will do. Okay, and that you are also agreeing to. So which is nothing but an agreement only, right? So when a proposal is made which is accepted by the other party, it is nothing but a promise, which actually is nothing but an agreement. Is this clear? Now let me write this once again, thoda in a better presentable format. Yes, so agreement is nothing but a promise. Promise is nothing but an accepted proposal. Accepted proposal is nothing but when an offer is made by one party which is accepted by another party. Correct? So agreement is nothing but a promise, which is nothing but an accepted proposal, which is nothing but offer plus acceptance. So agreement is nothing but offer plus acceptance. I'm sorry. Is this okay? Is this clear to you? Fine? Okay. Now what do you mean by enforceable by law? Enforceable by law means when you take this case to the court, court has to accept this case. Court has to accept this case. If the coal supplier does not supply coal to the factory owner, what is the factory owner going to do? He will recover damages from this party, from coal supplier. Factory owner goes to the court. Factory owner tells the court, Honor, Your Honor, listen, that he had to give coal at 1000 rupees, but because he did not supply, I ended up spending 500 rupees more. So what court tells? Yes, what you're telling is right. Coal supplier, pay 500 rupees to the factory owner. So what is court doing? Basically accepting your case and giving you a decision on that case, right? So basically what court does is, court sees that court is able to either obtain performance or to obtain compensation. Okay, so court is seeing what? That court either obtains performance or court obtains compensation. Okay, now when will your case be enforceable in the court of law? Is when your case creates a legal obligation. Okay, now actually speaking, enforceable by law is nothing but legal obligation being created. Now let me give you an example. Now after your foundation exams, what are you going to do? Party. You're telling you will do inter and all that. Okay, let me tell you thoda breakdown aur karenge. You have written your foundation exams. After 2 months, when you get your foundation results, you call your friends, you have passed foundation. You call them and you tell them that I have passed my foundation. What will your friends tell? Congratulations. Who is going to? None of your friends will tell congratulations. Friends will tell party. They want party first. So they will tell party. Okay, so what you do? You think, yeah, till now I have not given any party to these friends. So chalo, let me give a grand party to them. So you go and book, you ask all your friends, I will give a party on this Saturday evening. Are you going to come to the party? What will your friends tell? Yeah, you are giving a party. Pakka, I will come. Hai na? And 50 of your friends tell that they are going to come to the party. Okay, so what you do? You go and talk in Novotel. You bargain, ask for a discount and whatever, and you tell that 50 people are going to come. So say for example, the charges are fixed at 1000 rupees per person. So how much should you actually end up paying? 50,000, right? Now if suppose 30 people come, then how much should you pay? 50,000 and if 80 people come then how much should you pay? 80,000. ऐसा ही होता है ना होटल में. Yes, you can try this. ऐसे ही होगा. So extra whoever is coming you'll have to pay 1,000 per person more, but less if anyone is coming then you will still have to pay that much. Okay, minimum guarantee that much, so you will have to pay. Okay, so Saturday evening you're waiting for your friends to come to the party. That day only 20 people turn up. Okay, how irritated, how angry you are, correct? So what you do next day, you call them and you tell them, you have not come to my party, I am going to file a suit on you. Is court going to take this case? Is court going to take this case? Answer is no, because attending a party is only a social obligation. It is not a business or a legal obligation. Okay, so social obligations, are these enforceable by law? Legal obligations, are they enforceable by law? Yes, they are. Okay, your parents tell you we have to go to a religious gathering, we have to go to a temple or a religious gathering on Sunday morning. So you tell, yes pakka, I will schedule my classes in a way that I will be able to come with you. Okay, you have told everybody in that group, that Guruji and all that, that you're going to attend that. Okay, that day you do not turn up, you do not go to that meeting, to that gathering. Can those people file a suit on you, or can your parents file a suit on you that you promised that you will come to this religious gathering but you have not come? Can they file a suit on you? They cannot. Why? Because legal obligation does not arise. It is only a, you can say, religious agreement. Okay, so enforceability at law means what? Legal obligation. Is it okay? When you go to the court, court should take that. Is it okay? Now let me ask you a question. What is marriage? What is marriage? Is it a contract? Let me confuse you further. Or is it a socio-religious agreement? What is a marriage? Marriage is a contract. You have to get your marriage registered, and to get a divorce also you have to go to the court, no? So court is accepting your case. Marriage is a contract. Okay, in fact, you know, when you promise to get married to someone and you do not get married to them, you get married to someone else, that person has a right to recover damages from you, which are called as vindictive damages. We are going to talk about this in detail in unit 10. Okay, but what I want to tell you is, if you promise to get married to someone and you do not get married to that person, the other party has got a right to proceed against you. Okay, so is marriage a contract? Yes, marriage is a contract. So what is a contract? That agreement which has an enforceability at law, that agreements by which legal obligations arise, is a contract. Is this okay? So contract is equal to agreement plus enforceability by law. Okay, let's read what's given in the material, then I will dictate this to you. Contract is an agreement made between two or more parties which the law will enforce. Section 2H defines a contract as an agreement enforceable by law. This definition is based on Pollock's definition, which is every agreement and promise enforceable at law is a contract. So according to Salmond, a contract is an agreement creating and defining obligations between the parties. Agreement and its enforceability. So if we analyze the definition of contract, we find that a contract essentially consists of two elements. First is an agreement, second is enforceability. An agreement is defined as every promise and every set of promises forming consideration for each other. A promise is defined as when a person to whom a proposal is made signifies his assent thereto, the proposal is said to be accepted. A proposal, when accepted, becomes a promise. Thus in this nahi, thus in other words, it means that in an agreement there must be a proposal or offer by one party and its acceptance by the other. To sum up, agreement is equal to offer plus acceptance. Okay, so we have seen these words. Promise word we have seen, which is nothing but as nothing but agreement only. If you see in the act, the word proposal is used. So section 2b is a part of the act where proposal word is used. Offer word is not used at all. But is offer and proposal one and the same? Yes, they are absolutely one and the same. Okay, consensus addendum, ये separate एक concept है. So let us first finish writing this. So what is this? Write this. Contract is equal to, write like this only, agreement plus enforceability by law. Agreement is, put same arrows like this only and write agreement is nothing but promise. Promise is nothing but accepted proposal, which is nothing but offer plus acceptance. Enforceability at law is nothing but legal obligation. So what will court do? Court will either obtain performance. So instead of writing enforceability, I will write this over here. I will write court will. Court will obtain performance or court will obtain compensation. You can remember it like this. Court will obtain performance or obtain compensation forcefully. तो either तुम contract perform करो or else तुम compensation दो. Whatever 500 extra the factory owner has spent, give that to him. Correct? So forcefully is nothing but enforceability. So let's write down this example that A invites friends for CA Foundation pass party या फिर birthday party, write whatever you want to. Friends do not turn up. Can friends do not turn up for the party? Can A file a suit? Answer is no. Why? Because there is no legal obligation. It is only a social agreement. It is only a social agreement. Okay. Then you can write this example as well. A asks B, will you buy my car for 5 lakhs? B says yes. This is a contract. A asks B, will you buy my car for 5 lakhs? B says yes. This is a contract. Then you can write another example. Is marriage a contract? Yes. Is marriage a contract? Answer is yes. For divorce, you have to go to the court. For divorce, you have to go to the court. Okay. Then we have a next terminology over here, consensus ad idem. Now this is a Latin term. In law we have a few Latin terms. You have to remember them where I ask you to. There are some which are not required. I'll tell you those expressly. Consensus ad idem, this you will have to remember, and the spelling bhi dekh lo. This is the same spelling that you will have to remember as well. Now listen very carefully. Consensus ad idem means meeting of the minds. It means understanding the same thing in the same sense by both the parties. So both the parties have to understand the same thing in the same sense. Now I have two cars. I have i20 and I have Brio. i20 is a little more expensive car than Brio. Okay. Now my Brio has become very old, one big khatara it has become. I want to sell my Brio. So what I do? I ask my friend, will you buy my car for 5 lakh rupees? So he thinks, wow, yaar, I mean, 5 lakh rupees for i20, he's getting a very good deal. Okay. In my mind, what am I thinking? That I am thinking that I'll be selling the Brio car to him. But what is he thinking in his mind? He's thinking about i20 in his mind. Okay. Are we thinking about the same thing? No. There is no consensus ad idem. If there is no consensus ad idem, then there is no contract. Okay. So for a contract to be a contract, consensus ad idem is required. It has to be present. Okay. Now I'll give you another example. Have you seen this movie Hum Aapke Hai Kaun? Have you seen this movie? Okay, for those of you who have not seen it, just quickly, what happens in that movie? There is one Bhaiya and there is Salman Khan. Bhaiya and Salman Khan, they stay with their uncle, whom they call as Kakaji. So this Bhaiya, he gets married to a girl. That girl, we will call her as Bhabhi. She is Renuka Shahane. So Renuka Shahane and Bhaiya, they have a cute little chotu kid, and this Bhabhi is dancing on the stairs, and she's getting down the stairs, and she falls and she dies. Okay, this Bhabhi has a sister, Madhuri Dixit. Madhuri Dixit and Salman Khan, they have an affair going on. Okay, so this is Hum Aapke Hai Kaun for you. Fine. Now this Madhuri and Salman, they do not disclose their affair to anybody. When this Bhabhi dies, someone suggests to Kakaji that it will be better that since the baby is small, it will be better that Madhuri gets married to this Bhaiya. Okay, so she can take care of the baby as well. Fine. Now this Kakaji, he goes to Madhuri and he asks Madhuri that kya tum is ghar ki bahu banogi? Okay, this is what he asks him. Madhuri is so elated. She's so happy. She's thinking that wow, she's going to get married to Salman. But when Kakaji is asking this, what does Kakaji have in his mind? He is asking if she will get married to Bhaiya. Is there consensus ad idem? No consensus ad idem. If there is no consensus ad idem, then there is no contract. Okay, so in the end, does Madhuri get married to Bhaiya? No, because contract is not valid only. Okay, is this clear? Have you seen Hum Aapke Hai Kaun? Yes. Have you seen it once or more than once? More than once? Okay, those who have not seen this movie, your homework for today, watch Hum Aapke Hai Kaun. Now let me tell you, I am the only one who is going to give you such amazing homeworks. Okay, I will give you such kind of homeworks only. Tum dekho abhi, see what I am going to tell you. Okay, so over here I will write Hum Aapke Hai Kaun so that you can remember this. Consensus ad idem. The essence of the agreement is the meeting of the minds of the parties in full and final agreement. There must in fact be consensus ad idem. Before there can be an agreement between the parties, there has to be consensus ad idem. This means that the parties to the agreement must have agreed about the subject matter of the agreement in the same sense and at the same time. Unless there is consensus ad idem, there can be no contract. Okay, so law language can be a little different. If the last sentence is confusing you, you can write no consensus ad idem, no contract. Okay, so if there is no consensus ad idem, then there is no contract. What do you mean by consensus ad idem? Meeting of minds, understanding the same thing in the same sense. Example, A, who owns 2 horses named Raj Hans and Hans Raj, is selling horse Raj Hans to B. B thinks that he is purchasing horse Hansraj. There is no consensus addendum and subsequently there is no contract. Okay? Okay, obligation, this is the next term. Now if you see over here later, we are going to start essential elements of a contract. So before that, they are just telling us what few terms mean. Okay? So obligation, we know this. What is obligation? Legal obligation, which is nothing but enforceable by law. So court should take our case. An agreement to become a contract must give rise to legal obligation. The term obligation is defined as a legal tie which imposes upon a definite person or persons the necessity of doing or abstaining from doing a definite act. It may relate to social or legal matters. An agreement which gives rise to social obligation is not a contract. It must give rise to legal obligation in order to become contract. So what kind of obligation do we need in contracts? We need only legal obligations. Is that okay? Now, agreement is a very wide term. Now, you know, this agreement is a very wide term. This has been asked in many times in MCQ papers, and this comes as a short question, even asked in IPCC and asked in foundation as well. So now listen. Listen to my question very carefully. What kind of agreement is a contract? What kind of agreement is a contract? Okay, I'll open this page for you so it will be, you may be able to answer better. What kind of agreement is a contract? See, now you're able to answer. That agreement which is enforceable by law is a contract. Correct? Friend's birthday party, is this a contract? Going to temple, is this a contract? No. But are these agreements? Yes, they are agreements. But are they enforceable in the court of law? They are not enforceable in the court of law. So these are agreements, but they are not contracts. Correct? So social agreements, religious agreements, political agreements, these are all agreements. Only those agreements which are legally enforceable are contracts. Correct? Only those agreements which are legally enforceable are contracts. Right? Now listen to one more question. What kind of obligations are contracts? What kind of obligations are contracts, or what kind of obligations are governed by Contract Act? What kind of obligations are governed by Contract Act? Listen, you have an obligation to follow traffic signals, right? So whenever you see red light, what are you supposed to do? You are supposed to stop, correct? Did you and police enter into an agreement? I promise I will stop whenever I see a red light. ऐसा कोई agreement है? तुम्हारा sign, उसका sign, any agreement like this? No. But do you have an obligation to follow that? Yes, you are obligated. Is that governed under Contract Act? No, it is governed under, we saw this, yes, in the previous class, Motor Vehicles Act. Right? Now listen to my question once again. What kind of obligations are governed by the Contract Act? Answer is? Okay, let me ask this question to you like this. What kind of obligations are governed by Contract Act? Correct? Those which are agreement based. So when parties make an agreement amongst themselves which is enforceable by law, then those will be contracts. Correct? See, nothing. What I did was just the definition I asked you in different this and that terminology. Okay? Did you understand this well? Okay, let us write down. So write down first. Okay, just 1 second. So we were talking about agreement is very wider term. So see, now, is every contract an agreement? Is every contract an agreement? Yes. For a contract to be contract, first it has to be an agreement and that agreement has to be enforceable by law. Correct? But is every agreement a contract? Answer is no. Only those agreements which are enforceable by law, which have a legal obligation, are contracts. Correct? Only those agreements which are enforceable by law are contracts. Right? So see, agreements will include social agreements, religious agreements, political agreements, domestic agreements, legal agreements, all such agreements. But contract is only legal agreement. So that agreement which is legally enforceable is a contract. Correct? So which is a wider term? Tell me. Obviously, agreement is a wider term than contract. Right? Okay. So we'll read once and then we will write it down. An agreement may be social agreement or a legal agreement. If A invites B for dinner and B accepts the invitation, it is a social agreement. A social agreement does not give rise to contractual obligations and is not enforceable in the court of law. It is only those agreements which are enforceable in the court of law are contracts. Okay, so just the definition in different terminology. So to conclude, contracts is equal to agreement plus enforceability at law. Thus, this sentence is very, very important. All the contracts are agreements, but all agreements are not necessarily contracts. You understand why? Social agreement, religious agreement, domestic agreement, political agreement. So only those agreements which are legally enforceable are contracts. Okay? Now write this down. Sorry. So write this. What type of agreements are contracts? What type of agreements are contracts? Answer for this. Those agreements which are enforceable by law are contracts. Those agreements which are enforceable by law are contracts. Next question. What type of legal obligations are dealt with by the law of contract? What type of legal obligations are dealt with by the law of contract? Right answer. Those obligations which have a basis in an agreement. Those obligations which have a basis in an agreement. That is I.E. comma. That is agreement based obligations. Agreement based obligations are dealt with by Contract Act. Okay, just for your understanding, write this sentence as well. We have an obligation to follow traffic rules. We have an obligation to follow traffic rules. Put a hyphen and write not covered by Contract Act. We have an obligation to follow traffic rules. Put a hyphen, not covered by Contract Act. Okay, fine. So today's lecture I'm going to stop over here, but before stopping we have to quickly revise what we have done, and this is what we are going to revise every single day. So see what questions I'm going to ask you. You have to repeat also. I am also going to repeat the answer. You also have to repeat. So Contract Act ka happy birthday is when? 1st September 1872. This act applies to whole of India. this act is what is the object of law of contract? To introduce certainty and definiteness. This act is divided into two parts. They are general principles and special contracts. How are general principles different from other acts? General principles provide broad parameters of contracting. They allow the parties to make a law for themselves. Rights and duties of parties you will not see in this general principle part of contract act, correct? Parties can decide that for themselves. Okay, definition of contract: contract is equal to agreement plus enforceability. Another term for agreement is nothing but promise. Promise is nothing but accepted proposal, which is nothing but offer plus agreement. So agreement is equal to offer plus acceptance. Enforceability at law means legal obligation. Consensus ad idem means meeting of minds, understanding the same thing in the same sense. If there is no consensus ad idem, then there is no contract. Obligation we have seen. Which is a wider term, agreement or contract? Agreement is a wider term. So all dash are dash, but all dash are not dash. All contracts are agreements. All agreements are not necessarily contracts. Okay, I hope you have revised this with me. Okay, so we'll stop today's session. See you guys in the next session tomorrow. Stay hydrated and stay safe. Stay at home. Do not go out. Bye. See you.